where we are now, but also the young people who are here today. And actually, they have the responsibility of saving the entire world by saving one life. And I would like to welcome and greet the religious leaders, the representatives of the different cultures who are here today. And we will keep trying and understand how we can express this cry for peace by placing ourselves within the history of the world and the difficulty of defending life. And the title that we have here is particularly relevant. It is really ancient wisdom. Whoever saves a life saves the entire world. We have been asking this question within a pandemic that is not over yet. We are adjusting and we are coexisting with this pandemic. And nearby we have such a contagious war that casts its shadow of suffering way beyond the borders of our beloved Ukraine. It casts its shadows on the rest of the world through the collateral forms that are always associated to war, fear, hunger, lack of security about the future, social rage, desperation. On this wisdom, whoever saves a life saves the entire world, we actually found most of the survival of mankind, not just in the universal sense of the word, but here what is at stake is also how to remain human. It is the ancient wisdom that is enshrined in the Talmud of Babylon. At the center, there is life. Without life, there is no future. There is no humanity. And each life has its own value. And all lives have the same dignity. My life, your life, our lives, other people's lives. The life of those who are strong and those who are weak, young or old. You shall not kill. This is the commandment that is found in the Ten Commandments that were given by God to Moses in the books of the Bible. And this is a foundation for us. And yet, this founding wisdom was denied in so many different ways throughout history, in terrible ways as well. And we will understand this even better this morning. And quite soon I will give the floor to Rabbi Di Segni, who will help us really to deepen this topic. And it requires to be defended with imagination and going against the grain, going against the mainstream thought, where the lives of the weakest children, the ones who did not seem suitable for war, who were cast away in ancient Greece, the lives of entire peoples that were considered to be inferior for reasons related to language, their skin, their customs, race, an ugly word. The lives of the rich and the poor at the limit in the first and second industrial revolution. The unequal health of unequal lives. As the great British epidemiologist Michael Marmot has shown, if we look at mortality and social diseases, equal individuals whose life expectancy is 10 years shorter or longer, depending on whether they live in a different neighborhood in London or in Rome. Life that depends on geography, as is the case also for the death sentence. Even in the same states where it is applied, think about Texas in the United States, where almost 50% of death sentences and executions take place, and they basically, this is focused and concentrated in one single county in Texas. And there, practically more than half of all executions in the United States, they practically happen in that same county, in that place. So this means that not all lives are the same. And this is treacherous ground because it changes depending on the place, the circumstances, the fact that the life of the other might have the same value as my life because it depends on the content itself that we attribute to the word life. In every war, the life of the enemy is no longer life. It is not equal. War dehumanizes everyone in the name of life, actually, but also in times of peace in our Western societies. There's almost a new religion out there, the religion of the individualism. And this basically creates a gap between us and establishes a distance between us. It does not make us brothers and sisters any longer. So individualism, non-person. In the Italian constitution, instead, the word person always includes the other, the community, and not many molecular individuals in a way. Life is a relation, and these are all let's say this is food for thought that I would like to share with our panelists and all the discussants and you. We cannot give life to our own selves. Life does not exist without others. It includes and encompasses the mutual dependency from one another. And this mainstream thought of individualism, this Vulgate, risks really undermining this foundational concept. And I would like, in conclusion, to finish this provocation that I would like to address to our panelists by mentioning a very sensitive Italian writer, I believe, Claudio Magris. And he was an expert in European affairs, and he wrote that in contemporary society, it is the economy that gives the Ten Commandments to mankind from on Mount Sinai, and not God. In a surreal way, this is happening. It becomes increasingly real, however, and this is the surreal story that is told by visionary Swedish writer Karl Henning Wegemark in a story in which the Swedish welfare state, confronted with the fact that the elderly do not die as much as they used to, and that life expectancy is becoming increasingly longer, and this risks bringing the welfare states basically on the brink of bankruptcy. And therefore, cost cutting in an aging country and with longer life expectancy is described in an appalling way. There's an interministerial committee that basically plans in a responsible way the future of millions of people in a rational and democratic way. In the name of equality, they basically plan the death of millions of people. A voluntary obligation for the common good upon request of the elderly themselves. You just need to help them think in this way and ask them to do so. This book was written back in 1978. However, these questions in times of peace are something that we're constantly confronted with during COVID-19, for instance, and this has affected amongst the victims in a disproportionate way, not only the elderly, but also the elderly in nursing homes, in residential facilities. In these places where older folks wait for their death. And those nursing homes, with the homes without nurses or without anyone, they have protected all over Europe and the United States the elderly, even without any special help, 15 times as much, because the elderly who were in residential facilities died 15 times more than the elderly who lived in their own homes with their families. But then perhaps we should change our social models and the way now we lead our lives. And I would like to give the floor at this point to Rabbi Riccardo Di Segni after this short introduction. Riccardo, the floor is all yours. Riccardo Di Segni is a physician, is the chief rabbi of the Rome community since 2001, and since 1999 he has been the director of the Rabbinic College here in Italy. In 2010, he has become vice president of the Rabbinic Council in Europe. He's a close friend. He's very active in interreligious dialogue, and more specifically, with the Catholic Church. He has had a very deep relationship with Pope John Paul II, but actually, he's the chief rabbi who welcomed in the Synagogue of Rome Benedict XVI and then Pope Francis in 2016. He was the first to visit the Great Mosque of Rome in March 2007. He is a universal Roman with great wisdom, and we would like to ask him now to share his thoughts with us. And thank you.
Bene.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very kind and warm introduction, and also for inviting me to participate in this meeting here today. I have been participating in Sant'Egidio's conferences for over 20 years, but maybe after what I'm here to say today, you will no longer invite me in the future. The topics that you have touched upon in your introduction, of course, are all very important, and I believe that each one of the topics would deserve a specific discussion. So I will just limit myself to some considerations, specifically referring to sources and methodologies. So I will start with the criticism that regard the title of this panel. First of all, the quotation is wrong. And the second comment is that this title doesn't have the context that it should. And I will tell you why. So let's go back to the sources first and foremost, because when we are here to talk together, we should always have a very pragmatic approach. This sentence that we also find in the Quran is as a teaching that is addressed to the Jewish people. So the context of this sentence is a legal context. The Mishnah by Sanhedrin is a text that was written 18th century ago, and it deals with criminal procedures when there is a trial that may lead to a death sentence. Witnesses have a great responsibility, so they must understand that whatever they say may have tremendous tragic consequences. And now, if we go from this very legal context to a moral, exegetic context, then we should focus on two passages in the Bible. They are at the very beginning of the Bible. We read them yesterday in our liturgy. The murder of Abel. God says to Cain, "What have you done?" Abel's blood cries to me from the earth, and this is the cry of blood. And here we have the cry for peace in the title of this conference. First of all, we have the cry of blood. However, there is a very unique characteristics of this sentence that cannot be translated into Italian. It's not the cry of blood, but the cry of bloods. So it's the plural, not the singular. This could be due to the fact that the blood actually was spread all over. But the second consideration, and it's not only the blood of Abel, but the blood of all of his descendants that are no longer. So at the same time, we are to ask ourselves, why is it that we are talking of just one ancestor that is Adam, maybe because we may say that we all belong to the same human race, and there is no way that we can say that our ancestors are better than yours. But the second explanation is that if we come from Adam, if you kill a life, it is as if you're killing the whole of mankind. So if you save one single life, you save the whole of mankind, of humankind. So why the quotation, as I said, is wrong? Because there is a difference. Because the quotation says, "Who saves one life saves the whole world." In the Bible, it is said that it saves an entire world. So it means that every one of us has a potential to generate an entire world. We are not the entire world. So there is a next a highlighting of humankind, but also the greatness and fragility of the world. And why am I saying that the context is lacking, the context of this quotation? Because in that passage, the line of reasoning is that from a man or a woman, we see that a whole humankind can be generated. But what happens if a woman cannot generate because she's old or doesn't want to give birth to future generations? Is it that that woman's life has a value that is certainly lower than others? Then we may go back to Abraham and Sarah. They actually finally are blessed with a son when they're very, very old. He was 100 and Sarah was 90. But this was a miracle. Now we can go back to seeing this from a moral point of view. So the potential of an individual is not simply the potential that this individual has to generate, but I think that we should look for other sources. Isaiah the prophet says in chapter 53, and don't let the eunuchs say, "I'm a dried up tree with no children and no future." So the prophet consoles him, telling him that by observing our agreement, I will give you I will give you in my house a memorial. This is Yad Vashem in Hebrew, and this is the same name of the institute that takes care of the memory of the Holocaust. It's the World Holocaust Remembrance Center. So the value of the individual is not how reproductive that individual is, but how much compliant with the rules that individual is. So the value of his or her life depends on his or her choices. But we haven't got to the point that we want to get to. So the discussion about the value of life in absolute terms. So to find a source in this respect, I believe that we may make reference to a discussion that we may find in ancient Jewish sources as well as in the Gospels, where it becomes a polemical approach. It's a polemical approach that then grows over time and with history, and that sometimes we find them in daily preaching as well as in articles that are published in Italy. So the question is actually the clashing between two important systems. A religious system is the Shabbat, and we know that the Shabbat is the way by which the Jewish people pay witness, pay evidence to the fact that Jesus is the creator of the world, and this is something that must be fully respected. On the other hand, we have human life. These two systems may clash with one another. We know that the Gospels talk about miracles that take place during Shabbat, and Pharisees obviously reprimand Jesus. But this is not what we should only be concerned with, because we have to identify the actual classification of values. So the Shabbat is given to man and not man to Shabbat. So the issue is that the various procedures, the various rules for the Shabbat are given at different levels because we have different seriousness of life that may be at risk. So if it is a cold, then this is a very different situation from a person who's actually risking his or her life. And a paralytic can be actually healed on a Sunday. So what is that really matters? So I believe that the principle upheld by the Jewish tradition is that life has priority over the Shabbat as well. But what kind of life? The life of a person that can give birth, or the life of a person who complies with the rules? Well, we have many case histories that can support principles. For instance, the case of a building that collapses and we have people under the rubble. We do not know whether these people are dead or alive. We have no idea whether they can survive. It's a Saturday, and on Saturday we cannot act, we cannot move the rubble. So what do we do? It's Saturday, maybe everybody is dead already. Well, in the past, we were very much aware of the so sad crash syndrome. That is when a person is actually crashed under a huge weight, or when the person has very little expectation or hopes for surviving. So what is the principle that is upheld in this situation? Is Haishina Lechayeshaha. That is, we are concerned even for a life that can survive an hour. That life, even if it were only a few minutes of life, is of the greatest importance, and we must do what we can to save that life. So this is something that binds us. Together with this principle that, as I said, comes from a legal context, there is another principle that the teachers, the masters say that is a logic evidence. And what is this evidence? It is not written in the ancient scriptures, and the evidence is that my blood is not in any way redder than yours. So we have gone through these legal journey, and if you allow me, I would like to conclude with a rabbinic story that talks about the value of people with difficulty. We have two masters, Yudan and C, the person that was the most important one at the end of the 2nd century, and his disciple. They have started on a long journey, and they stop at a little village, and where they ask, is there someone that would be worth our visit? And they are told that there is an elderly who is blind and that cannot leave his home. And so the rabbi says, do not worry, I will go and visit him. And he goes together with his disciples. So they meet, they talk, and then before taking their leave, the old blind rabbi blesses those who visited him. And he says, you have been so kind as to come and visit a person who everyone can see, but that he himself cannot see. So you may have the merit to meet the person that we cannot see, but that sees everyone. Thank you.
E quindi Rabbi protestò con il suo leo, Rabbi.
So the rabbi said to his disciple, why did you want me not to go visit this rabbi? So here we see the richness of diversity, the strength of weakness, and the eternal value of life, any life. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Di Segni. And now we have decided that whoever saves a single life saves the whole world. It's not really a quote, but it's actually a manifesto, basically. It's a program, and we have decontextualized this concept because we knew that Rabbi Di Segni would be here, so thank you. Thank you so much. Well, really, thank you indeed. It has been extremely enriching, and we will keep talking about this. But at this point, I would like to give the floor to Professor Donatella Di Cesare, who is sitting here to my right. Donatella Di Cesare, she's a philosopher. She is a full professor. She teaches theoretical philosophy at the Sapienza University here in Rome, right? Did I get that right? Okay. And she has been studying a lot the hermeneutic thinking of several, let's say, currents of thought in Europe. And it's also a member of the Martin Heidegger Gesellschaft. She's also a member of the scientific committee of several prestigious reviews of philosophy in a European level. And she kind of represents quite well Western thought and also intelligent thought, let me say this. And she, however, follows very closely a public debate. The term public debate, while she is committed, promoting peace and also promoting immigrants. And I would like to give her the floor at this point and thank her in advance for her words. Thank you. I would like to thank you wholeheartedly for your kind invitation. To me, this is an honor and a great joy to be here with you today. And we learned also from the words of Rabbi Di Segni, whoever saves a single life saves the whole world. Well, first and foremost, I would like to say that today we are living in times in which life is considered just like any other. They're all the same, meaning that there is a widespread, let's say, equality in terms of measurement, personal advantage, figures that matter more than people, and the bottom line basically holds sway. Is this cost effective or not? Is this useful? Does it give me any advantage or profit? In the vise of these quantitative relations, where human quality is lost. Life is not one any longer. It is not irreplaceable and unique, no more. Therefore, without really too many guilt feelings, you can let life fall, be consumed, wasted, discarded, abandoned. Also, in the etymological sense of this word, banished, right? Abandoned because it has been banned. It's literally been expelled from context that deserves to be defined as human. Just think about what happens every day, the current affairs, what happened last night even, when lives of children were left to die amongst the waves of the Mediterranean Sea or at the European border. And this is a shame that's happening in Europe day in and day out. This is absolutely appalling. These lives are considered as being unnecessary. These are human beings who are treated as waste. And this had never happened in the past. And nobody knows what to do with this waste, and they might live or survive in so-called refugee camps. Basically, where they are sentenced to a life in limbo, that it's not even life, it's not even a real existence. But if they even try to move from there, then it becomes clear at that point that those lives are considered as useless. They're basically worth less than zero. But this terrible rift that has become even deeper between the lives that are considered as being worthy to be lived, who are immune and from the virus pandemic, and instead the rift between these lives and lives that can be exposed to any risk, lives that can perish. And this rift is not just found between what is inside or outside the political landscape, that unacceptable and which has actually been accepted, division between those who are citizens and those who are immigrants. This rift also crosses through the heart of our societies, insinuating, penetrating in the meanders of widespread violence in the streets, in schools, in the workplace. Think about all the workers who die on the job, within families. Life seems to be worthless, deprived of the sense of human and the divine, even as if it had nothing sacred any longer, as if that life were not unique, unrepeatable, irreplaceable. And this is an enormous loss. It's a loss for everyone when this happens. Almost as if that life basically came out of an assembly line and might be easily replaced soon after it has come out of the assembly line. We do not stop any longer in front of other people's lives and in front of other people's faces, the unique faces of our brothers and sisters, the uniqueness of lost life, but the uniqueness of those who save, of those who must save, the people who are there in that moment, who should take on this responsibility. The uniqueness of the self, of each and every one of us, is that no one can basically be replaced. We're all irreplaceable. And this privilege is a responsibility. It is a privilege that is associated to the responsibility. These two terms go together. And responsibility towards our brothers and sisters is what is missing the most nowadays, whereas instead what prevails is this ignorant and increasingly poor self-referential approach. Because when one life is lost, an entire world is lost. The world of otherness, of the others, which is also my world, our world, the world that we all share, the world of our community. We are becoming increasingly poor, and the world is becoming all the poorer for this. Basically sentenced to deal with this deep discomfort that only general terms is called depression. There is no sense of revanche. There is no sense of salvation for me, for us, and for our world. And the self that does not shy away from the uniqueness of its calling and its responsibility is the South that I believe is projected and propelled into a world of peace. It is not peace as we have heard in the last few days. It's not the peace of equal distance. It is not the peace of being unfazed. And I would like to refer here to a major philosopher, Emmanuel Levinas, and his pages on peace have been forgotten all too soon, albeit we do live in a different world from Levinas's, but they're still current today. So it's not a peace of equal distance or of being unfazed, of non-aggression that can ensure a position, a place for each and every one of us. Instead, it's the peace of relations with others. And this applies even more to political subjects and entities to those European peoples who are called to live together side by side in a new Europe, learning the lesson of the 1900s, which was the lesson of violence and mass slaughter. And now European peoples have slowly drifted towards a nationalistic and bloody conflict where dozens of thousands of human lives are sacrificed every day. Quite often, they're very young people, like many of you here, young Russian soldiers, young Ukrainians, whose lives are basically come to an end in the midst of, let's say, discarded steel and iron that needs to be recycled. Why should we accept death as the inevitable solution to conflicts? Why do we need to embrace the mysticism of heroism? Politics that do not save lives, politics that require death, that's necropolitics, that requires as a solution, the necessary solution, death. It's the politics of death. It is not worthy of being considered politics in the eminent sense of this word. And this is how worlds and universes of death are sketched out, where violence, arrogance determine personal relations and decide upon the lives of the individuals. And I believe that there was the warning that was then conveyed to us by Pope Francis that I would like to refer to in conclusion. Then at that point, this war would spiral out of control, becoming an attack against the life of the entire planet, because we cannot forget the nuclear threat. It was a threat to the life of the entire planet, the food cycle, the energy cycle, our existential cycle. Thank you so much.
Quando la filosofia
When philosophy actually helps us understanding history in our own life. So thank you, Professor Di Cesare, and hopefully we will hear you again when we will go round the table a second time. I was in Lampedusa with 5 other members of parliament. 5 hours later, the most devastating tragedy of migrants that died just before the Italian coasts. They actually stayed in slavery for a long, long time, and finally, after 2 years, they succeeded in boarding that boat, and unfortunately, they never arrived. So the Italian government, the police, and the people of Sant'Egidio for a year worked, and they finally succeeded in identifying every single man or woman that died. in that tragedy. At least we were able to give them back the dignity of their names. And now I would like to pass the floor to a friend, to a fantastic writer, to a very, very, I should say, hero of our time, Grégoire Ngombonon, who comes from Benin. He was born in a farmer's family in a small village in Toupet, and his personal life story of religious conversion is quite emotional. He founded the San Camilo de la Lys Association, and in 5 African countries, he nowadays cares for thousands of psychiatric patients that are really profoundly impacted by the stigma of mental illness. So I believe that we have a short video to show. Would you like to show it now or later on after your presentation? And if you want, we can, in the meantime, show this video while listening to our guest's presentation.
Thousands of people live chained up and forgotten. They are affected by mental illness. They're mentally ill. But they're guilty of no crime. They're victims of fear, ignorance, and poverty. And this is what Grégoire's work is all about. Saving these people. Redeeming them. Through the Saint Camille de la Lys Association, they have saved already more than 70,000 people. And he keeps fighting on. So that No one is shackled or in chains.
Basta con le
Enough with chains. Grégoire, please. Good morning to you all. Personally, I would like to thank the organizers, all the organizers and the founders of this community of Sant'Egidio. And they do not just fight for peace, and they also fight for all those who are still chained and the people who are forgotten, like the mentally ill. They're abandoned by everyone. There are thousands and thousands of people in Africa who are basically sentenced to die. And they're not, we should not just see them as mentally ill people, that they're actually persons created in the image and likeness of God, who sometimes these people used to go to school, they had a family, and suddenly they were affected by this disease, and they are all forgotten. Sometimes we are afraid of them. We think that basically they are shamans or that they are possessed by the devil. And initially, I saw them that way. I haven't studied. I know nothing. But I decided that I wanted to look for God amongst the forgotten and poor people. This is why I'm here today with you to tell you about this experience. At some point in my life, I lost everything. I was just about to commit suicide and kill myself. And so I started really from the rock bottom situation I found myself in. And I'm very happy that religious leaders from all religions are here today, because you cannot just believe, you cannot believe in God and then leave our brothers and sisters and cast them aside and abandon them just because they're ill. We all have to rise up in all countries, because this happens in all African countries. Mentally ill people are chained and shackled. And I had lost everything, and I basically could have ended up like that, like them. I almost killed myself, but God came to really pick me up and lift me when I was in the gutter. And a missionary priest helped me, and he sent me to Jerusalem on a pilgrimage. And during this pilgrimage, this priest would say each Christian should take part in the construction and the edification of the church by laying down the first stone. And this sentence struck me. And in the Ivory Coast with my wife, we started looking for this first stone. And this first stone one day led me to work with mentally ill individuals. I saw a mentally ill man who was rummaging through the trash to look for food. And this is something that we see everywhere in Africa. Initially, I was scared. I used to be scared of people like this. But that day, I stopped and started looking at this man. And I realized, well, this is actually Jesus. He is Jesus. Jesus suffers through this man. And that day, that was the day when everything started for me. And I started rescuing these people. And I would send them also to a small chapel, treating them with respect, the respect that they're entitled to. And a woman came to me and said, could you please come to my house? My father is very sick. And this man didn't want any help. And they were afraid. They were afraid of him. And when they opened the door of the house, I saw this man in chains, just like Christ on the cross, with the arms held together with iron wire, and we rescued this man. We cleaned him up. When I took him to our center, the first thing he said to me, he said, I don't know how to thank you and the Lord. I do not know what I've done to deserve all this. And he said, I can still live. What do you think? Can I still live? He still wanted to live. He had this wish to live still, because life is sacred. But unfortunately, he was doing so poorly that he passed away after a few days. But at least he died a decent and dignified death, like a human being, not in chains. So we started traveling through the different villages, and we saw that there were all these people in chains. And now God proves to us that no one is lost. All these men and women, they have to find their dignity again. Whoever is in shackles, it means that the whole world is in shackles. It's a shame that men and women are in chains like that. So we have to rise up. We have to fight so that also weapons are silenced. But we have these chains hidden in these villages. And also in other places. And sometimes these people are beaten with sticks because they believe that they are possessed by the devil. And they said, well, we beat this person because we want the devil to leave this man's body. But look at this chain. This is the chain that was wrapped around the hands of this man. He was naked and in chains. This is how we found him. And he basically was chained to a tree for 7 years. He was only waiting to die. So please, tell me, what crime were they guilty of in their lives? What have they done wrong, all these mentally ill people? Why? Why, you tell me? Are we any different from them? Are we any different from this man? And no one would say anything, because this is what I would say to the bystanders who were there. I was invited to speak in Brussels, and there were human rights activists and members of the European Parliament, and I showed them footage that was even more powerful than the footage I showed here, and there were people in tears. But then once they walked out of that room, that hall, they forgot all about them. Then I hope that you will not forget about these people. You will not forget them. And I would like to thank Sant'Egidio. It's the third time I come here, and I want to cry out for these mentally ill people, these forgotten people, abandoned people. And it's the third time that you allow me to come here to basically plead on their behalf. Please do not forget them. Never again. Please, I beg you, do not forget them. Give them a chance, because they want to live just like everybody else, like we all do. This is the cry for life. It is the cry of life. They were not born ill. No, they were not born ill. They were born like all men and women. They want to live like anybody else. Thank you again for your kind attention.
Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gregoire. We certainly do not know what we have done to deserve your presence here and your action, but we commit ourselves to live as you are asking us to do. Thank you. At this point,
To Muhammad Abdul Kabir Azad. Muhammad Abdul Kabir Azad è il grande imam della moschea di Lahore in Pakistan.
Is the great imam of the Badshashi Mosque in Lahore. That is the most ancient mosque in Punjab. And this mosque in history is certainly located in an area that now belongs to different countries but is no longer a kingdom. He is among the most prominent protagonists in Pakistan, and we know that together with Indonesia, Pakistan is the largest Muslim country in the world. He was a good friend of the ministry, the Catholic minister that was killed a few years back. And he is the leader of the Interfaith Council for Peace and Harmony in Pakistan. And we would like to pass him the floor because he's an extraordinary witness of the tragedy that Pakistan has suffered recently due to the tragic floods that have been destroying many areas of the country. Sometimes climate changes actually have the harshest impact on already critical areas in the world. To you, the floor. Thank you.
In the name of Allah, the most merciful and mighty. I take start with the name of Allah. There is a saying of Allah in the Holy Quran. And this is Arabic. I read it just for you people. Man qatala nafsan bighayri nafsin aw fasadin fil ard faka'annama qatala an-nasa jami'a. He is just reciting Arabic. Then when he takes start with the speech, I will continue with. Distinguished President, faith leaders, and dear audience, young students, great people, and all leaders, I welcome and greet you with the words, first of all, I welcome you all to this session, and then I'm grateful to the Lord of the universe, whose favor made my efforts and energies to help in good deeds, and also thankful to the management and leadership of community of Sant'Egidio that today we see this beautiful session that whoever saves a single life saves the whole world. I understand this is the sign of great leadership. This is the sign of sincere leadership. I salute you all. The friend of Africa who narrated his story, his personal and experiential story, I understand that there is a great message for all of us. We need to think about it. This is the message of this session. The Holy Quran, in our holy book, Allah says, if somebody saves one life, he is saving the whole lives of the humanity. And this is the message for all of us. Whatever our religion is, whatever our background is, whatever our color is, why not we understand this fact? Let's we think as a human being. We are the human being. We are the most important creation of Almighty Allah. We are the vicegerent of Allah on earth. So we need to think. We have been gifted with many talents, with many capabilities. Our religion, whether it's my religion, your religion, or the religion of other, it doesn't ban us from the humanity. It doesn't ban us from peace, from love, from respect, from interfaith harmony, intrafaith harmony. And this is the common culture. I salute my friend who shared his story. I wish that these people, they maybe go throughout the world to understand the situation. Let's we get united. The message of the session is great. It is about the dignity of the human being. The dignity of the human being is the common value of every religion. So we are thankful to Almighty Allah that we all share one and the same, that we are the creation of Allah. We are the sons and we are the children of Adam, and we have been given dignity by Almighty Allah. So regarding the respect and the protection of humanity, I pay tribute to all agreements, covenants. Yes, but the Charter of Medina, that irrespective of color, race, and religion, the Treaty of Medina was presented in such a way that it has been declared the history of the world that guaranteed the basic rights of Muslims, Jews, and Christians and assured a peaceful life. And even more, when the Prophet of Islam hosted the delegation of Christians from Najran in the Prophet's mosque, it was a universal message. He gave the message of Islam, that is the message of love, that is the message of respect, that is the message of peace. And what we do in Pakistan, yes, in Pakistan, we do exactly the same job as dictated by our religion, the teaching of the Prophet, peace be upon him. We are enjoying great relationship with our Christian fellow, with other religious fellows. And yes, whenever or wherever something unwanted that has happened in Pakistan, so we have become the source of blessings for all the people who were suffering. For example, in Joseph Colony, when the Christian community was attacked, that was really a bleak day in the history of Pakistan. Unfortunately, many Christian fellows were attacked, and we were the people to rush there along with the religious scholars, along with my followers. I went there, met with them, I sit with them, and I told them that I will not move from this place unless the culprits has not been arrested. And yes, I was there. And they told me later on, when they were coming to my mosque and meeting me, they were telling me, Maulana, you were the source of blessing by that specific time for all the Christian community. You have consoled us. May Allah reward you. You are really a great source. So these were the words. Yes, I told them that why we do this, because this is the message of my religion, and this is the teaching of my prophet, peace be upon him, because my prophet is Rahmatul lil Alameen, the blessings for all the humanity. I must also mention that yes, Pakistan has recently passed through many hectic issues and challenges. For example, the war on terror. Many people have been killed. Not a single place, even the schools, the mosques, the universities, the hospitals were attacked. The churches were attacked by the terrorists. But the people of Pakistan, the forces of Pakistan, the government of Pakistan, they have stood against them. And I'm very happy that ulama, religious scholars, under the leadership of great scholars, including me, we were there to stand against all these terrorists, and we helped the people, and we rushed to provide them with any support where they were required. Recently, Pakistan has been faced with terrible flooding, and the terrible flooding is such a flooding that more than 2,000 people have been killed, and more than 30 million people have been displaced. Thousands of people have lost their homes. They are in need of food. They are in need of meal. And my message is very simple. Let's we help all the human being, all the suffering, wherever they are. They are in this land, or they are in other land, or other places. Yes, we were faced with many challenges in Pakistan. Pakistan has passed some hectic and terrible challenges, but we, the ulama, we have come forward and we have provided them the leadership and helped our Christian fellows, other religious fellows, and now they are celebrating our presence. They have trust on us that yes, these are the people that they have become the source of blessings for us in time of difficulties, in time of challenges, in time of problems and sufferings. Honorable President, my question is that is this the result of religion and religious teaching? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Honorable President, I boldly declare before this honorable House that these events and incidents of violence have nothing to do with religion. It's a black mark on the name and face of religion. Religion and violence are two different and contradictory names, like peace, like anything. Thank you. Grazie. Once again, I'm thankful to all of you that you have given me the opportunity, and we will go through the world to spread this message. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you, Grand Imam Azad. And now we have two last wonderful speakers. They will provide us with two different perspectives, but I would like to give the floor once again to a man of religion and a biblical scholar. We're fortunate enough to have here Arman Puig Tarrech, who hails from Barcelona. He's a theologian, a biblical scholar. But as a theologian and biblical scholar, he's also the co-director of the Corpus Biblicum Catalanum, and he has coordinated the publishing of the Interfaith Catalan Bible. And he's director of the major seminary of Barcelona. He's not just a man of culture, however. He is a very fine literary scholar. He has a great heart. And I finally understood the Sagrada Familia thanks to his explanations. And I'm very grateful to him because few people can convey that depth. So, Arman Puig, I apologize, but would also like to add that he published in Italian an extraordinary book with a simple title, Jesus, that I recommend, and I would like to give you the floor. Thank you.
Dopo questi interventi vorrei dare la parola a qualcuno di voi e poi rapidamente.
And then after these last speeches, I will give the floor to the audience, and then we will go around the table. I will begin for the interpreters. I will begin on page 2, because the first page was explained quite well by Rabbi Di Segni. Well, the principle of a life that needs to be protected because it is weak, accompanied because it's hard, particularly cherished and loved because it is weaker for this reason. As a matter of fact, the imagination, and here I would like to refer specifically to the elderly in my contribution today. According to the words of Andrea Riccardi, builds this marginalization, right? And so we are building our society on sand, on a foundation made of sand. And as Riccardi stated, those who give space to the elderly, give space or give room to life. That's a beautiful sentence. As a matter of fact, we find this in the book edited by Maria Cristina Marazzi, Andrea Sprafico, Francesco Tedeschi, Gli Anziani e la Bibbia, The Elderly and the Bible, Spiritual Readings for Old Age. This was published in 2020, and I would like to recommend this book to you all. We ask ourselves, what is the relationship between one single individual and mankind as a whole? From the merely, let's say, numerical and quantitative standpoint, it is obvious that a person counts less than 100,000 people. It was Caiaphas, the high priest, a few weeks before the death of Jesus, to express the primacy of the criterion of quantity in front of the Sanhedrin of Israel, saying, it is convenient for you that only one man dies for the people, and so that the entire nation will not end up in ruins. I'm paraphrasing from John 11:50. The principle of quantity is meant to underline that there is a substantial difference between one single man and the entire world, or between a group of human beings and mankind as a whole. I would not also linger on the concept one world, the world. However, according to this principle, it would not be appropriate to say that saving a life would mean saving all lives. This principle of quantity would not seem to warrant this consequence. For instance, a weak life would not have the same weight than a powerful or strong life. The life of an old man or woman would not be worth as much as the life of a young man or woman if we refer to this notion of quantity. And this reasoning is based on the assumption that an elderly person is endowed with a declining humanity, almost imperfect, whereas young people have a long future ahead of them and are able to contribute to our common wealth. And now there's another principle that comes into play, that of usefulness. Quantity, first of all, utility or usefulness, the second principle or criterion, which is viewed in terms of results. As a matter of fact, an elderly individual needs to receive a lot of care, unlike a young man or woman who usually does not have health problems and can provide a quote-unquote positive contribution to society. According to this angle, to this standpoint, not all lives then would be equally relevant. Some lives would be more useful than others, and therefore, perhaps saving a declining life that's reaching the end would not be a good choice if we consider, for instance, and this is a common trope, if we consider the assets that need to be dedicated to keeping this declining life going. The criteria of quantity and usefulness or utility do not contribute to save nobody's life, because with these criteria, we cannot save any life, because we can always reason and say, well, it's not worth it. On the other hand, quite the contrary, these principles lead to deceit, because they do not save our own lives nor other people's lives. The criterion of quantity leads to injustice and discrimination. If a human person, for whatever reason, is opposed by many, 1 versus 100,000, right, as we were saying earlier, this circumstance would be enough to underestimate that individual and deny the dignity that that person is endowed with and that it shares with all other individuals. The criterion of usefulness, once again, in the same way, leads to then discarding other people, abandonment, so being banned. And I'm sorry if I say this, though this individual is judged and sentenced in a way because his or her life is seen only in purely productive, which means materialistic terms, without taking into account the contribution this individual might give to the spiritual dimension of society. The presence of an elderly person elicits love, as is the case when we have a small child in front of us. This triggers or elicits love. The criteria of usefulness and quantity, therefore, neglect the spiritual dimension, which instead is essential, and it belongs to those underlying movements of history that are a source of energies for good that change the world and basically transform the world. And therefore, we are now coming to a key concept in my contribution, which is the relationship between people as instruments of salvation for all and for the world in general. An encounter and reaching out. This is the opposite of the clash. Encounter is the opposite of clash. Clash means rejection. But it can also be a polite form of rejection, right? You can reject other people with an attitude of indifference. And remember this word, indifference. The salvation of the other cannot be achieved by putting the other person between parentheses, as if it was an incidental presence, and if it were not there. The weak relations between individuals that characterize our world quite often lead to treating others through the rationale of indifference, which is always unable to save. If with indifference this round table we're having would have no future, it would be meaningless. With indifference, we pretend that we welcome other people, we listen to their needs, to their ambitions, but their life to us is distant, it's remote, it's far away. What prevails is the inability to grasp what is different in the other person that is different from me. As we could see also from the images shown by our friend Grégoire. You see that we could see this person who was physically close but then distant. So polite indifference does not save anyone, does not change anybody's life. It just sugarcoats everything. Indifference does not change anyone. So what is needed at this point so that this principle might work? What is required? We need compassion and passion. Compassion and passion. Only in this way we can go from knowledge, the cognition, the recognition, and then also being grateful. Rejoicing in meeting the other means vanquishing the logics of indifference, which just like the snake in the Garden of Eden whispers in our ears feelings of detachment from others and building walls. Watch out for that snake. Be careful. The subtlest walls are not the ones that are expressed through an explicit rejection of the other, but through indifference through other people, towards other people. Indifference does not allow us to build bridges, but actually, unlike rejection, it seems politically correct. It seems legit. And we do not feel guilty. We do not feel any pangs of guilt in our conscience for not having built that bridge. So, to express this principle of mercy, set aside these notions of quantity and usefulness or utility. Let's focus instead on the story that we all know, we're all familiar with, that we should perhaps take heed to more often, the Good Samaritan, the famous parable that we find in the Gospel. And he saw a man he did not know. He was half dead by the side of the road. And would he have risked his life if no one was there to save him? Would he have stopped and been merciful, taking care of this person? There was no obligation for that Samaritan. No one was watching, right? Actually, he was out of bounds, right? And probably that man was a foreigner, a Jew. The Samaritan might have left that man by the side of the road, and no one would have reproached him for this. The logic of indifference could have prevailed. Compassion was not something that could be taken for granted in that kind of situation, but that Samaritan, he chose mercy. And unlike the high priest and the Levite, he set aside indifference. He opted to save a life rather than letting this life go to waste. That half-dead man on the road to Jericho, he represents mankind as a whole, beyond our ethnic origin, our religion, our different languages and cultures. And basically, he grabbed this man, put him on his back. It means taking on our shoulders, on our back, all mankind, the famous painting by Van Gogh, probably, then what language of love is not limited or confined or contained by any border or consideration or any principle, but this language expresses for itself a principle that goes beyond the criteria of quantity and usefulness. It's the principle of mercy. And I'm telling you now in conclusion that whoever lives out this principle will truly save the life of the others and will save the whole world. Thank you.
Grazie. Grazie per aver condiviso.
Thank you so much for having shared with us your wisdom, helping us to find antidotes to indifference. That certainly can be a more polite form of rejection, and it's hard to be identified. I would like to conclude our first round with an important voice, a physician, Nourejan Abdul-Majid, who is the person in charge of the DREAM program in Mozambique. You may take the floor in the meantime while I introduce you. Nuja was born in Maputo, Mozambique. For us, and especially for the community of Sant'Egidio, is a country that is very close to our hearts. We celebrate 30 years of peace that was actually built in 26 months in Sant'Egidio between 1990 and 1992. So that was a dream, and after that dream, we thought of a second. We had a second dream, that is freeing Africa from the scourge of dying for AIDS with no treatment. So ever since 2002, we launched the DREAM program, whose person in charge is Mrs. Abdul-Majid, and she, together with other colleagues, coordinates this program across 10 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. She's also contributed to establish the first home services for patients that cannot be hospitalized or that cannot reach hospitals. Thank you. Now over to you. I am from Mozambique. I was born in Mozambique, and I will speak my language, Portuguese. I wish to thank the community of Sant'Egidio for giving me the opportunity to address you on such a prestigious opportunity. I've been working with the community for the past 20 years, and I feel I'm very proud to say that I was the first physician to work with Sant'Egidio and the first one to use the antiretroviral treatment against AIDS in my country. Let me tell you what it means to treat AIDS and other chronic diseases in my country, where having access to hospital and treatment is only the privilege of a very few people. During the COVID period, our Holy Father said there is no peace without the culture of treatment. The culture of treatment is a way towards peace and to go over and fight against indifference. Recently, many people died because of COVID. The pandemic hit across the world. And nowadays, many people continue to suffer and die because of other disease. And the access to hospitals and treatments is not equal. There is inequality between the rich and the poor, and this is devastating, especially in the poorest countries in Africa. thanks to the very strong tie of friendship with Mozambique that dates back to the 80s of the last century, and also to the efforts of the community of Sant'Egidio that led to the peace agreement in 1990, to the exponential spreading of AIDS up until then, actually killed over 1 million positive patients. It was a new war that we could not face with indifference, but rather strengthen the principles of universal access to treatment. We needed to allocate all the available resources to treat as many people as possible, and at the same time improving the access to treatment both in Mozambique and in Africa as a whole. So Mozambique was the first country that in 2002 actually saw the launching of the DREAM program. This treatment process tried to help those people that were afraid of asking for help because they were under the stigma, women, men, children with no hope for life. And this cry made us understand that medical treatment was not enough. We were to be concerned with physical suffering as well as giving these people a chance to be part of the society once again. Before meeting with Sant'Egidio, I used to work at the National Hospital for Tuberculosis, TBC, and I had been working for 2 years, and I felt very frustrated because I saw more than 5 people dying per day. They were all AIDS patients. And although they were suffering from tuberculosis, I was unable to help them because they died almost immediately. We actually had no treatments. We had no drugs, and I thought that I was useless. My background was of no avail. It was very difficult to see the agony of these patients. We all felt very frustrated, and I was asking myself, when is this desperation going to end? Is there anything else we can do for these patients? And also, our patients were desperate because they felt as being not only weighted down by the stigma, but also because they were feeling as being cursed with a death sentence. And this was the situation at the time. Only the rich could really have access to treatment. But in 2002, I finally got in contact with the DREAM program, and I finally could see hope. Just by the General Hospital of Mashava, where I used to work, there was a small DREAM center. It's a small building that was reorganized to actually welcome these patients. At the beginning, it was very difficult because we were the pioneers. We were welcoming terminal patients, and because of the seriousness of this situation, it was difficult even for me to believe that these patients could eventually be saved. I remember of one case, a very ill patient that I was actually treating at home, and I was sure I was going to write her death certificate. And she had the very same features of the patients that I was seeing dying in the hospital. But every single day that she was able to live, it was a source of joy. So I cannot tell you how happy I was when I saw her, that she was actually recovering. And as a woman of faith and as a physician, I thought that that was a miracle. We have many patients that eventually were saved and healed, and we have many patients that are now working with us, conveying their experience to actually give courage to those who suffer. globalization has brought about many other diseases and many other needs for treatment. So we could not just stay put. And a dream then has turned into a global health project. We have 10 African countries that are part of it, and we have become a model of excellence. We fight against the malnutrition, AIDS, and many other contagious and chronic diseases. We use the best possible protocols that seem to be working in Africa as well. Our dream centers are reference centers for chronic disease. We can welcome all those who need to be treated for AIDS, for tuberculosis, but also for many other chronic diseases such as epilepsy and diabetes. We also carry out cancer screening as well as the treatment for COVID cases. So we deal with malnutrition and the treatment for mother and child. We use a telemedicine platform where we are supported in real time by colleagues in Italy and in other European countries in fields such as cardiology, diabetology, and other fields. We also carry out a training on the job thanks to their supervision. Recently, we have been able to train thousands of health professionals, physicians, nurses, biologists, and we've done so by conveying a humanist approach to health and treatment, especially because in Africa diseases are looked down upon as a superstitious kind of way, but we have a different take on diseases. Patients deserve to be treated well and taken care of, and our assistance is free of charge. But there is something that I'm extremely proud of, and that gives me a lot of hope. That is over 150,000 children that were born healthy from AIDS patients, from mothers suffering from AIDS. To bring into this world a healthy child for a mother who is sick is a miracle. So it's important to say that if we continue with passion and love and to take care of our patients, many children will be healthy. And these children nowadays study medicine, for instance, but let's say that they lead a healthy, normal life, and they also would like to share in our action. Dream is also an example of the right way of giving back. Our children have their own areas where they can play and hear stories that our workers tell them. So when I look at them and when I see these children that enjoy their games, I really feel very happy. The children come to us and they feel at home. They feel they are in their own family. A grandmother told me that her grandchild, who was an orphan, told me that he spoke about me, that he had a mother who was a physician, a doctor, and he said to his friends, beware, because if you do something wrong to me, make sure that my mother, who's a physician, will help me. And this I want to share with you to tell you what is the atmosphere of our center. We give dignity to our patients, to our women, to the children. We build a community of care. So to fight against stigma and biases, this has led many women that are now helping us in caring for other patients. And many of these women who are well now have become professionals. They dedicate themselves to the benefit of patients because they felt firsthand what the despair for the stigma is. So in a very difficult world such as ours, where the most vulnerable, the poorest, cry for help, but then we have to find a way to give them an answer. We needed to prevent, to treat, and to convey a sense of mankind, of humankind. By ourselves, we will do very little. So we should forget about our differences and unite for a common cause. It is the unity that will stand out as an example for future generations, as the DREAM program is. So if we believe and if we want to go further and press ahead, our Lord will always be with us, for he will always help us to alleviate the pain of our fellow man. And as a faithful and as a physician, this is what I deeply feel, and it's part of my being and my being a physician as well. Today, DREAM can be defined as a sanctuary for those who look for treatment, but also for those who come and visit us, because it's an example of hope. I am a Muslim, so many ask me, how can you work with the community of Sant'Egidio that is a Catholic community? And well, every time I'm a bit taken back by this question, because this for me has never been a problem at all. And being a faithful Muslim, how could I not work with the community of Sant'Egidio that is a Catholic community? And why should we have religious frictions if we pursue the same goals? I believe despite our different religions, we may find a common harmony in the love for our fellow man. We go along the same journey, and collaborating with people of faith means that I feel supported. People that come to us have a wide variety of religions, but there are no divisions, there are no disagreements. We fully respect every single religion, and we recognize we are the children of just one God. And in my religion, there is sadaqah. That means the opportunity to voluntarily do good for others, because this is a source of joy for the person that does it and for the person that receives it. So healing is not simply healing with drugs, but with affection, love, confidence, and mercy. So regardless of our religion, race, and color, we must all unite in facing up to this challenge. We Muslims, Jews, Christians, all faithful together. We are part of an enormous universal puzzle that can actually work together so to win over evil, and those who save a life save an entire world. Thank you.
Thank you. We like this mosaic. I think that you have liked it too. Humanism, excellence, and gratuitousness. I remember the opening of a dream center where an African president participated. It was a big event, and the next day, then the first treatments were provided, and there were signs everywhere. This is free. And everybody said, you know, you can now hide those signs because the president is gone. No, in DREAM, everything is given for free of charge. So at this point, I would set 12:15 as 12:15 as the end time for this session. We have 30 to 45 minutes. I'm saying this because, like in school, we're all here without waiting for the bell to ring, because it's extraordinary what's happening here. You know, when you are at a party, no one wants to leave. So we will have a break at the end of this session. There will be no break. But I would like to give the floor to whoever would like to say anything. Just raise your hand and the mic will be brought to you. We can gather a few questions and comments, and then we will ask our panelists to reply and give us their answers. So if possible now, I would like to give the floor to someone who lives here in Italy, has been living here for quite a while. And this person actually represents the Sikh tradition. From Punjab, we heard earlier, Punjab is a very large region, but this region also sends lots of migrants all over the world. And these migrants are contributing in many different ways to the life of other countries of this nation. Karum Di Tankip, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, I apologize right from the very beginning. Let's give her the mic. She has been in Italy. She lives in Cremona, and she is a healthcare worker, a healthcare professional. So we would like to hear from her an initial reaction to what we have heard so far. Good morning to you all. My name is Kaur Kandip, and I belong to the Sikh community. And my country of origin is Punjab, the land of the 5 waters next to Pakistan. And I would like to thank Sant'Egidio for having given me this opportunity. I would like to talk about the value of life. Let's all walk united towards peace. We all want peace. There's no prayer in the world that does not bring peace, and there is no peace that is not invoked by a prayer. In nature, we talk about the butterfly effect. It has been argued that when the butterfly basically moves its wings, and basically that can cause a hurricane somewhere else in the world. If the interconnection in the natural world is so powerful, it is even more so in the human family. We're all interconnected. Humanity is like a giant family. This is why saving in life is so important. The beneficial effect is spread. Every act of love has a big echo. We might ask ourselves, what does saving a single life mean? And who is truly able to save a life? There is a salvation that comes from above, and I'm not just referring to God. I'm talking about the spiritual dimension of life. And then there is the salvation of love, of charity, and fraternal help. If we look around, we see pleas for help everywhere. The riven world invokes salvation, both with tiny gestures and at global level, that it's expressed in a greater dialogue so that peoples can together can look for the values that we all share as human beings. And I would like to share with you the vicissitude for a very valuable person for our community. And he was able in the best way to interpret the concept of saving one life. His name was Purag Singh. He was born in 1904, and for most of his life, he decided to work in a community setting, protecting the environment, basically. This was a topic that was not considered a priority back in the day. Purang Singh, he established basically a nursing home for sick people and disabled people. His institute was called Pingalvara. And one of his quotations that I still cherish in my heart, that I would like to share with all of you, is now the translation: whoever provides a gratuitous service without thinking of any reward will reach his or her Lord and Master. And this is all I wanted to say, and I thank you all for your kind attention.
Grazie.
Thank you. This is another fragment in this beautiful mosaic. And now, if anyone has any question to ask, just raise your hand and someone will bring you a mic. But in the meantime, I would like to take this opportunity with our distinguished panelists here, co-speakers or friends actually, and I would like to ask a few questions so you can all answer in your own way. I'm thinking about the fact that Professor De Cesare, earlier spoke very clearly about human rights. We are at a time in history when human rights tend to be reduced to the rights of individual citizens, and then from rights of individual citizens to rights of only some amongst the community of citizens. And entire parts of our planet or even of our society are excluded from this. I believe that this is a very relevant subject matter. So if in the meantime, let's see, well, here I see someone who is asking for the microphone here in the fourth row, I guess. While I'm asking the professor to think about this, I'd like to ask you to ask a short questions, so, just make your point in a concise way. Thank you. Well, I was thinking that in addition to human rights, we talk about the rights of God and the rights of nature. Therefore, I'm wondering whether contemporary issues might prompt us to introduce a new educational protocol beyond training for skills. But we should educate the human person at all levels. And I'm thinking about also lifelong learning. This perhaps would be a question to Professor Di Cesare. Yes, and others as well. Yes, this is very useful. Is there any other request here for the mic? Way there in the back, I see a raised hand. If you could please be so kind to introduce yourselves before you speak, that would be great, or the city you come from. Or Thank you. My name is Andrei. I come from Russia, from Moscow, and I belong to the community of Sant'Egidio, and I would like to thank you all. I come from the war. We know there's a war between Russia and Ukraine. And now war tells us about the lack of value of life. So death is not a tragedy, but it's the daily and current news that we hear every day. And any man can be sent to fight a war anytime and be killed, or instead kill somebody else. But my church, the Orthodox Church, I am Orthodox. And the gospel, according to Matthew, says, do not kill, and you will love your neighbor. Love your neighbor. And I think the same principles is found in practically all other religions. So this is not something that can be questioned. This is not politics. This is what our Lord asked us to do. And I'm very proud to be a believer and to belong to a Christian church, an Orthodox church, because this allows me to resist this debasement of human life. And thank you for your kind words. Please pray more intensely for war to come to an end and for every sacred life to be preserved. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. And the words we heard yesterday come to mind, and the words of Pope Benedict XV. He said that we have to learn to pray for peace and not just for victory, the victory of our side. So thank you. Thank you very much, indeed, for having made this very important point. I'm wondering whether anybody else would like to say anything, ask questions. Once again, there in the back. Good morning. My name is Cinzia, and I wanted to ask a question. this is a question to Professor De Cesari. We were talking about necropolitics, which introduce a distinction between valuable deaths and worthless deaths, and valuable lives and worthless lives. And I don't remember, Andrei, yes. Andrei, of course, recalled the war that we are all witnessing between Russia and Ukraine, but in the world there are many other wars happening that are completely forgotten. This too should make us think, to make sure that there are no, let's say, valuable deaths, instead deaths that are completely worthless. For instance, Palestine. Every day, men, women, and children die there, and the same attention, perhaps, towards these deaths is not there. People are not as outraged for these deaths. So I'm wondering, yes, indeed, it has been absolutely wonderful and incredible that in 3 months we have all become Ukrainians. But why is it that 70 years have not been enough to all become Palestinians? And this is what I wanted to ask Professor De Cesari. Please, whoever asked the question, answers can come from anyone, not just from Professor De Cesari. Sorry, I want to correct. I'm sorry, I apologize. Earlier, I said De Cesari, instead it's De Cesari. So thank you. Thank you very much. I believe that I would like to remind you all that there are no wrong questions, but only wrong answers, if any. So if there is a sacrificial victim from the Manara High School who would like to ask a question or make a comment, you are more than welcome to do so. In the meantime, I'm wondering if anybody else would like to say anything. Yes? Good morning. It's not forbidden. Anyone can make a comment or ask a question. Good morning to you all. My name is Barbara. Can you see me? I'm a volunteer working for the community of Sant'Egidio here in Rome. I've been a volunteer for maybe for less than a year or around 1 year. And what I would like to say from my heart, this community of Sant'Egidio, thank you really for being there. You are awesome and we are awesome. I see with great joy that there are many young people here. So I would like to ask each one of you, whoever would like to answer this question, because the question is the following. Once one of my brothers, when I was about to leave the house to work as a volunteer, he said, thank you. Well, don't you think that this is just a drop in an ocean, a drop of water in an ocean? Sure, but as Mother Teresa used to say, oceans are made up of drops. So anyone who would like to take this question, please, could you explain to us all and to these young people here what we can do tangibly, individually in our lives? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Prego.
Thank you. Please introduce yourself. I'm Virginia from Rome. First of all, thank you. Thank you for these presentations that I found all very emotional. And as regards the title, Who Saves a Life Saves a Whole World, I'd like to have your comments on embryonic life as well. I'm expecting, as you can see, and this is something that really concerns me a lot. And I'd like you to spend a word on this. Thank you.
Posso anche io rispondere? Mi prenoto se ci sarà tempo, se no rispondono gli altri. Prego.
Fabrizio.
I'm Fabrizio, and I just wanted to say thank you. I'd like to say thank you to all of you, and thanks to Gregoire for what he has been doing, for what he is doing. And I believe that what he's been doing should be of concern to all of us, also in our Western world, especially in Italy. So thank you, Gregoire, and thank you to all of the rapporteurs and distinguished guests for this fantastic panel.
Prego.
Buongiorno.
First of all, good morning to you all. I'm Valeria, and I'm attending the High School for Humanities Manara. I'd like to thank you for your testimony and for this panel that I should define as being a lesson for life that is far more powerful than 100 hours that we may dedicate to studying in the classroom and at home. Thank you. Thank you, Fabrizio. This certainly adds some sense to our lives, Fabrizio, so thank you, because we understand that this may yield fruits in young people, and it's a great pleasure for us to hear this. Now, I see there is somebody else who would like to take the floor. Please, over to you.
I've heard. I'm Clara. I'm from Utrecht in the Netherlands, from the community of Sant'Egidio in Utrecht. And I have a question because I'm a medical doctor and I work a lot with elderly people. And during COVID, there was a discussion when there were not enough places on the intensive care, and it was not a reason for the elderly people are not useful, but the reason I have heard in one of the stories, the reason young people have more years to live, and I think I have heard a lot of reasons now for the discussion, the unicity of life, and life is worth in its own, but it was difficult to talk about that reason that gave in the discussion why elderly people are the same, have the same are worth to save like young people, in the same way.
Thank you. I think you are touching a crucial point. The selection of which life is worth to be given the chance to live, and for the elderly especially. Not only, but for the elderly especially. Quindi il diritto di vita.
So the right also of weaker lives, so to say. This is something that was discussed at length during the COVID pandemic. It was a terrible choice to decide whether the lives of the elderly were just as worthy as the lives of the young. So this would lead us to passive and active euthanasia. This is something that I mentioned at the very beginning of this panel. Do we have other questions from the audience? And maybe a last one, and then we will try and start going around the panel for giving you answers and comments.
Posso fare la domanda anche senza...
I'd like to pose a question. So my question is for Gregoire, the person that presented us the situation in Africa. However, there's something that I have not precisely understood, because his is a very complex issue, that of mental disease and alienation. I was extremely taken by the fact that he succeeded in saving the lives of 70,000 people. This is incredible. I would like to understand how he succeeded in saving these lives and not being a medical doctor. So how could you do this? How were you able to save these many people? Because in the video you showed us, we understand that the strength of the group was a driver for the salvation of these people. And then we see that these persons later on succeed in interacting within the group. And it was very interesting to understand how you succeeded in doing this. Thank you. I believe we should start all over and start with Rabbi Mr. Disegni, and I'm sure that he will be able to add something on what we just heard, and he may either decide to reply to some of the questions posed or continue along the lines of this debate. I'm sure that you are in agreement. Thank you. I must say that this is a very engaging panel, rich of many different stimuli that have contributed to highlighting the complexity of the many problems that we have to face up to. It's a vast universe of problems that demand us to find a way out. So allow me to say that there is something that should call the attention of us all in this spirit that brings us together, that makes us feel full of goodwill. So to join forces and build something, we must keep a critical approach and do away with rhetoric. Because when faced with conflicts, that ravage the world, when faced with the issue that rights are given to citizens only or to some citizens, and this is certainly not new in our history, is on the contrary a way of going back into the past. So we cannot fight against this by saying we're all Russians, Ukrainians, or Palestinians. This is rhetoric. We should be looking for the truth. We must keep a critical approach. And we should be able to say that we do not side with either sides in a conflict. We are pro-life, we are pro-justice. Zechariah says, love, truth, and peace. These are the words that should enlighten us.
Imam, prego, a lei la parola.
Now we pass the floor to the Grand Imam Muhammad Abdul Kabir Azad. Over to you.
Good questions are coming from. I understand. Many questions are good questions, and one thing is very common about the Ukraine and Russia issue, but there are other issues as well and challenges as well. Kashmir, Afghanistan, Palestine, we understand, we are all the religious people, and we understand that cruelty is cruelty, whatever the form is. How we can raise our question against any cruelty, any oppression, wherever it is. The topic is well defined. This is the message of the Holy Quran. I have read it in front of you. Whoever saves a single life saves the whole world. And if somebody kills a single life, he kills the rest of the humanity. If you're talking about Ukraine, the people of Ukraine, yes, we must talk. Let's we talk about all the humanity. And this is humanity, and there is nothing above humanity. Wherever we are faced with any challenge throughout the world, we must raise our hand. This must be the voice of each and every individual. Thank you.
Now pass the floor to Professor Armand Puig, and then we will pass the floor to Gregoire and Professor Nourja. And then it will be my turn to wrap up the panel. Thank you. Thank you for the many stimuli, for the many questions. This is a very rich panel, I should say. There is a question that certainly touches upon many of us who are present here today. That is, what can the young people do in actual fact? What can they do? Personally, I believe that there is a very fashionable word, which is sentiment, feeling. This is a very fashionable word. We say, I have a feeling for you, or I will have a feeling for you, and the feeling is present. So having a feeling is fine, but having a feeling cannot be a roller coaster going up and down. So we should really nurture sentiments and feelings that stay over time, that are rooted, that are strong, that cannot vanish overnight. When our friend Gregoire met for the first time a patient with a mental disease, maybe he could have said, oh, how terrible that is. I really feel very sad. But then he could have totally forgot about it. And his life would have been different. But he did not do that. He held on that feeling and used it to build something that was so very much into his heart. His heart changed. He thought, my life will have no meaning unless I take care of these people. So, dear young people, you must nurture sentiments and feelings that stay strong over time. Now, the elderly. Our elderly people are our wisdom, our source of wisdom, the living wisdom, and we must reach out to them. We must go towards them. There is not a gap between generations. This is a falsehood. This is not true. The elderly are the true friends of the young. And we see this in the community of Sant'Egidio, where many young people go and interact with the elderly. This is true beauty, beauty that can be shared by many more. Thank you.
Gregoire.
Grégoire, over to you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity you have given us to talk about those who cry out, those who want to live. Someone asked a question, how have I started actually? And I saw something that doesn't come from within me. The life I've lived, and what I've done doesn't come from me, because I needed to fix. I used to fix tires as an immigrant in the Ivory Coast. I have no medical background, and I come from Benin, by the way. When I was in Benin, I used to believe in God, and I always used to go to church, and God has always been my guide. But in the Ivory Coast, I turned my back on the church because I made good money fixing tires. Then something happened and I lost everything. I lost everything I had earned and I had built. And as I told you earlier, I was about to kill myself, and my life was awful. It was terrible. God protected me. I too could have ended up in chains because I was losing my mind. But I was fortunate enough to meet a missionary priest who supported me, who listened to me. And this priest organized a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. He paid the ticket for me to travel to Jerusalem. I went on this pilgrimage, and during the pilgrimage, I heard from the local priest these words: every Christian must contribute to building the church by laying the first stone. Everyone should put their own stone to build a church. The church is not only made up by men and women religious, it's all of us, even the laity. And so I wondered, what is the church? Which is my church and what is my stone, right? And so I shared this experience with my wife when I traveled back and said, okay, let's look for this first stone. And we created a prayer group. We went to the hospital. We went to visit the sick. We prayed with them. And in this hospital, we discovered all these sick people, abandoned, untreated. Because in Africa, well, I'm not just talking about the mentally ill, but the other sick people, they too. There's no healthcare system so that they can get care. If there's no family member that can pay for medical treatment, that's it. You're on your own. No one will treat you. So in front of these abandoned sick people in the hospital, we said, okay, before praying with them, we should show them our friendship. So we went there, we paid for their medication, and many of these sick people were treated. And some of them, the ones actually that could not be saved, at least they died a decent and dignified death. And there I started understanding why Jesus identified with the poor and the sick. And from that moment on, our wish was to look for God and look for him in the midst of poor people. And then we started visiting jails and prisons, and then street children, lepers. And one day, I met this mentally ill man, as I told you earlier. I would see these people naked in the streets, rummaging through the trash to eat. As I told you earlier, they are seen as people who are possessed by the devil, sorcerers or something like that. And when some important dignitary comes and visit Africa, all these people are basically picked up by by garbage truck, and they're basically carted off to the suburbs so that no one could see them. And so in the 1990s, I saw this naked man, this sick man, and for the first time I stopped and I started looking at him. And once I started looking at him, I could see Jesus in him. And at that point, I said to myself, he is Jesus. Sometimes they can be dangerous, as you know. And I was scared. But then I saw, but if he represents Jesus, why should I be scared of this man? And from that moment on, I was not scared anymore. And I said, well, at night I want to see where they sleep. And I started meeting with them. I realized that they were real women, children, men. They only wanted to be loved. And I'm happy to see that there are so many young people here today to listen to our words. Let's see, a piece of advice. Well, what was said earlier by the other speakers, you have to love your brothers and sisters. Everything comes from the love that we show each other. You have to love up to the point of giving up your life, and you should not be afraid. You have to love to the bitter end, and this means saving others. Yes, do not be afraid. Nurja.
Bom dia para os tradutores.
Well, once again, good morning. I will speak Portuguese. When I started, well, I was young, fresh out of college. I completed my medical studies. And my dream was that of becoming a physician who would save people's lives. And this was a major challenge. The challenge was that I could see so many people dying from tuberculosis in the hospital. But think about signing death certificates every day. When then I met the community of Sant'Egidio, there was no antiretroviral treatment available, but we needed to start from somewhere. I had no experience. I did not even know how to use medication. There was no experience in Africa when it came to the treatment of TBC. But I said yes for the first time, and that was the beginning of my story. And so, young people, you can do whatever you want, but you have to do it for good. You have to do so much good. You can save not just lives, but you can do good for everyone you encounter along your path. When we started the DREAM project, it was a tiny thing, but now we are in 150 countries. Sorry, 150 centers, correction. And when we started with one single center, one HIV positive patient, and then another one. And now everything has grown exponentially, and the situation has changed. And this happened also thanks to the great training we have received. We have activists, we have biologists. Who are the activists? The activists are the sick people. Once they recover, then they decided to help us. We train them. Education and training are extremely important. Saying yes is important. Helping our brothers and sisters is important. And we are a big initiative, perhaps not size-wise, but the impact, our impact is huge. Thank you, Professor. Well, you have touched upon many different topics and subjects, but I will try to make it short and sweet for you. First of all, I would like to say that that situation we are now experiencing is unprecedented. It's an unprecedented situation because we are living a situation of a major separation between civil rights and human rights. And there's a philosopher whom I admire, Hannah Arendt, whom I would like to mention today. She was the first one who, with a prophetic gaze, grasped this situation, this truth. She said in the future, more and more, there will be masses of people who won't be able to access citizenship, and they will be excluded from rights, from their rights. The description she was describing, she was a Jewish refugee. She was a Jew, and we knew that after the Nuremberg laws and also the racial laws here in Italy, they would basically leave Europe looking for shelter. And what we are experiencing today is an even sharper or wider separation between civil rights, which are the rights of citizens, especially within Western democracies, and the rights of those who do not have a flag, right? Do not wrap a flag around their shoulders. They do not have a state that might protect them, or the state they come from is not powerful enough to protect them. And they're human beings, actually, who instead need more protection. And this separation, this rift is very clear, is very powerful, and many have drawn people's attentions on this, the difference between our Western comfort zone and the global periphery. So it's true that we have a schizophrenic attitude. We look at what happens in our backyard in a way, and what happens elsewhere, we look at differently. We always talk about our rights, forgetting all the human beings who are out there and who might be exposed to anything and everything, to COVID, war, persecutions. The list goes on and on. It is true that there are forgotten wars out there, but it is also true that this war, the current war in Ukraine, is a war that we must recognize this. This has caused a major trauma for us all and on us all, because it is a war that is happening in Europe. And this is a huge problem. This is a defeat on our part, right from the very beginning, because we could never imagine that there would be a similar situation happening in our continent. We already saw some very troubling signs during COVID, and thank you for the comment that was made. Even the ghost of eugenetics and the specter of eugenetics is rearing its ugly head again, when the lives of elderly people were discarded. In Italy too, because there were no respirators, and there weren't enough devices to treat people. However, Europe is the homeland of human rights. The idea of human rights was born in Europe, and especially because Europe was emerging from the two terrible world wars of the 1900s. So this is a major defeat for us. And I use the word necropolitics to basically denounce politics of death, which gives up its eminent role, because politics is such an important word to me, and it gives up its preeminent role, which is that of settling disputes, and it says, no, we need a war. How? We thought what? We thought that conflicts could be solved through politics, and instead, politics is now telling us, no, we need to sacrifice lives. I was reading earlier, the breaking news I was reading earlier, 70,000 Russian soldiers who perished in this war. So I'm thinking that this too, earlier we spoke about life, and we should also talk about death, because we are living at a time of incredible trivialization of death, and basically, and removal of death from our, basically, from our standpoint and from our outlook. So I would like to thank you for your questions, and once again, going back to the words uttered by Rabbi Segni, I repeat once again, we're all Ukrainian, we're all Palestinians. Well, as far as I'm concerned, because of my political beliefs, I do not take sides. If I have to take a side, I take the sides of all defectors. I'm on the side of all those who look for peace, because right now I believe that it is absolutely indispensable to achieve peace through political means. Conflicts should be solved thinking about the cohabitation, the coexistence of peoples, because we cannot accept this within Europe, and of course, also this cannot be acceptable anywhere else. And in this sense, thank you. In conclusion, I would like to simply add this. Our Russian friend is perfectly right when he basically quoted the gospel. And I would like to add this. Since we are in this specific place, I do not trust some of the political voices we heard. And they give religions a marginal role. They think that religions have a marginal role to play. On the one hand, you have a secular, lay, civil society, and on the other side, you have religions. No, I do not think that this applies to the current situation. It's an obsolete view. And right now, religions, as we could see also today in our panel debate, because of the concept that religions have of life, I believe that religions right now should play a fundamental role in order to achieve peace. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Di Cesare. So we have come to the end of this forum this afternoon. There will be more going on this morning, tomorrow morning as well. We will keep developing and building actions and thoughts of peace and for peace. I was thinking about another great sociologist and philosopher, Zygmunt Bauman, and he made us realize he showed contemporary society as a liquid society, a consumer society that is based on the creation of waste. In order to consume more, you have to throw away stuff constantly, to the point of becoming, societies that have to throw away human beings. Zygmunt Bauman. So migrations and discriminations, almost as if they are a necessity for consumer society to thrive. And as a society we live in. And so Pope Francis speaks about the throwaway society. And within these things that are thrown away, there could be the life of the embryo, the weak and fragile life of the elderly, of peoples. And so I listened to the important things that you all said. We should never deal with these topics in a rhetorical way, because every life, not only categories, but each single life, from wherever country, whatever religion, is a life. That's it. And then I also heard the words of those who said, we started from something tiny. Gregoire, for instance, Nurja, they started with one single sick person and basically reaching out to one single individual. And anyone can do that. You are asking, how can we change the world? The world is so unbalanced, and yet nothing is impossible. When the DREAM program was launched, it was forbidden to give medication in sub-Saharan Africa and in Africa in the southern part of the world, because the United Nations and the WHO, in their guidelines, they wrote that prevention was enough in the southern part of the world. That was a lie, because they do not want to take on that responsibility. So against the world. That initiative was born in a tiny little place far away in the peripheries, just like the periphery of the capital city of a peripheral country, Maputo in Mozambique. And public health care is changing in Africa. And so the battle against the death penalty of the community of Sant'Egidio started from one single inmate who was in Huntsville, Texas, and he wrote a letter to Italian newspapers asking for friendship. From one letter, from the relationship that was established with this inmate in death row, the global campaign to stop all executions started. And since then, since the 1990s, the countries that abolished the death penalty, also thanks to the work we have done in Sant'Egidio, that contributed to a world coalition against the death penalty being established, and it contributed to the approval by the United Nations of the first resolution in history in 2007 for a universal moratorium of executions. And it's still working on this right now. Well, all this in the last 20 years, 50 countries in the world abolished the death penalty. It had never happened before. From the Code of Hammurabi, that the death penalty is being part of the legislation of countries in the world. In 1975, just 16 countries had abolished the death penalty. For 3,500 years, the entire world has always used the death penalty, as a matter of fact. And this is a turning point in history, but we did not think that from one simple letter all this could come out, right? So anyone can do this. So the weak life and the life that is thrown away when people are sick, the elderly, this is so true. They are our wealth. They are an asset. We owe democracy to them. They saved us. They gave us the well-being that we enjoy now. But the elderly are not just a repository of wisdom, but they're also very fragile, frail life, to the point of being disfigured, of not even looking like human beings anymore, because they're too thin, they maybe do not go to their doctor, so they cannot help with somebody else feeding them. But they are the ones who gave us our lives and fed us when we were little. And just like an AIDS patient whom I met in Mozambique many years ago, and she was a good friend of Dr. Nurja, Anna Maria was her name. She used to walk with a photograph in her purse, because when she was sick, she was wafer thin, 30 kilos. She looked like a skeleton. She looks like a dead woman walking, and she was evicted from the village so that she was cursed. She needed to die alone. But then she was found by the DREAM program, and she joined the program, and slowly but surely she started feeling better. And so she would bring this photograph in her purse, because when she went back to her village, they thought that she was a ghost, because she was evicted to die. And she came back and she was alive. It's me. You see, it's me. Look at the photograph. And this basically then gave encouragement and strength to thousands and thousands of women. She was a dead woman. Think how much life is there when it seems as if life is practically all gone. It doesn't look like life any longer even. This is what we have to fight for. And so I believe that the life of the embryo and the disfigured life of the end of life must be linked together by the same dignity. I think that we will be stronger in defending life if all life, without any exception, starting from the embryo, they cannot defend themselves. They do not even know that they exist, all the way down to the disfigured life at the end of our days. But each life can contain an entire world. That's what it is. This does not mean that there should not be laws that, in extreme cases, protect who, for millions of reasons, have problems in bringing a pregnancy to its completion. I'm thinking about Italy now. This also means that these laws as well, the law that we have here in Italy, it's not a law on abortion, it's a law on life. And it is stated clearly in the first few lines. But that part of the law, right, the mindset, which could be a mindset that kind of passively accepts life and death, has not developed this concept. But even in Italian law, it's called Law 144 on abortion, we can eliminate despair, accompany in difficulties, both the life that is about to be born and the frail, fragile life. If we are able to do so, then we basically eliminate the arguments of those who say want to die, because people want to die because they are alone, they're desperate, they do not like themselves anymore because other people tell you you're ugly, not because you're no longer a man or a woman. If other people make you feel ugly, then you want to leave, right? But if other people look at you with tenderness, even when you look different than the times when you used to be strong, then you don't want to die, because that stretched out hand keeps you alive. And those who hold your hand learn life from you, you who are so disfigured. So, and I would like to say in conclusion that we have a lot of work to do, big work, but I believe that this morning we will all leave this room changed, different. We all know now that everything is possible, that we can do anything, but it's a lot less complicated if we join forces rather than if we act individually. Thank you.